Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson Today. We're listening to Killer Cases, and this is Murder in the Barnyard.
It was very difficult to buy that story.
Amy was quite unhappy and was actually thinking about leaving Todd. There were aspects of an affair.
You believe the last time you saw her that you did have some type of sexual relation.
Started watching the first day and I was hooked.
Todd Mullis looking at a big penalty. The case kind of took off.
It was compelling.
He killed Amy before we. I can understand.
And could not believe that this man was being tried for this. He couldn't have killed her.
There's a search for what did ancient cultures do to infidelity. Did you do that search?
No.
16 facts about cheating women. Did you do that search?
No. Todd, did you ambush your wife Amy in that shed that day and brutally beat her and chop her up with that corn fork? No, I did not. You know who did. I have no idea.
This is what he's going to tell you. Another situation.
And I grabbed the gun.
I'm not the first place to put a body. No, sir.
The only thing they could do was kill him.
Do you want to say anything?
We, the jury, and to find the defendant.
What's the address of your emergency room? Oh, hello? Hi. Where are you at? Okay.
A farmer in Iowa, racing to the hospital with his injured wife Amy in the back of his pickup truck.
Okay. You're not responsive. I just need my family.
Bleeding heavily as she lay in the lap of their teenage son, Tristan.
Amy. Okay, so what happened that she's not conscious or breathing? She fell on a fork. I took out her fork out of it. It was an old fork getting in somewhere, and then she was halfway out of the barn. Just called the kitchen out of her.
What is your name, sir?
Todd Mullis.
Todd Mullis and his wife Amy and their 3 children lived and worked on this farm in Delaware County, Iowa. It was their life.
Everything they did revolved around their farm. That's how they made their living, and they had hogs and they raised hogs, and that was their livelihood.
It was on a cold November day with a dusting of snow on the ground and the crops harvested that Amy Mullis was discovered unconscious in this red shed on their farm by her son Tristan.
It was reported as a farm accident, and that it was reported that Amy had allegedly fallen onto a corn rake. It would look kind of like a yard rake, only that it had 4 tines, and the tines were much longer, like 8 to 10 inches.
Can you pull over? Okay, how about you pull over?
The 911 operator told Mullis to pull over on the side of the road.
Sir, do you feel comfortable doing CPR? I can try. I'll try anything. Okay. Pump the gun hard and fast, at least twice per second, 2 inches deep. Twice per second. 1, 2. 1, 2. Now.
It did not work. 38-year-old Amy Mullis was pronounced dead at the hospital in nearby Manchester, Iowa, in the same emergency room where she had once worked as a nurse. Her son Tristan, distraught.
Child was covered in blood. I think obviously traumatized from what he had come upon, and the fact that his mother was now placed on his lap, bleeding to death. The whole trauma of just trying to hold her, comfort her, while they raced toward the hospital and any help they could get.
Farmers are constantly reminded of the potential for accidents on the farm.
With
very nature of the work presents potential safety hazards.
Accidents involving tractors, and these can overturn, falling into grain bins, getting suffocated. In this area, they're very common.
But almost immediately, doctors at the hospital where Amy Mullis died began to raise questions that her injuries from a corn rake did not seem consistent with an accident.
We were going, this could be an accident, but this could be a homicide. We knew it was something unusual. We needed to find out as much information as we could as soon as possible.
The definitive word came from the grisly photos of Amy's back taken at the medical examiner's autopsy, attended by lead investigator Deputy Travis Hemestath.
Well, there was actually 6 puncture wounds in Amy's back, and it was reported that she had fallen onto a corn rake, which is a 4-tine rake.
The likelihood of this person falling on a fork and falling on it twice with sufficient force to puncture the body would be totally unlikely.
Now, it was a homicide investigation.
The corn rake made it almost a quintessential rural Iowa murder.
And of course, in such cases, the husband is always the first to be questioned.
So at that point, the investigation primarily was looking at Todd as more of a person of interest than an actual suspect.
But Todd Mullis and his son both said they were in this barn, about 100 yards away from the red shed, before Amy's body was discovered.
The son said that Dad was always within his eyesight. He never lost sight of him.
So, had someone sneaked onto the farm and killed Amy?
Unfortunately, there were some indiscretions by Amy that would lead investigators to at least think about some other individuals.
Indiscretions, it would later emerge, involving at least 2 extramarital affairs.
Amy had had an affair about 5 years previously. That had broken off. But in 2018, she had begun another affair with a fellow who was a farm manager.
Her phone revealed text messages from the farm manager named Jerry. Could Jerry or another of Amy's lovers have been the killer?
Potentially, yes.
Amy's personal life and all her sexual indiscretions, her affairs and her lovers, soon become the focus of a case that would make headlines around the world. Life on a farm can be harsh and unforgiving.
A lot of farmers work very hard for what they have. When I say hard, I mean very hard.
And investigators would learn that was true in so many ways on the farm where Todd and Amy Mullis made their home. They had become 21st century versions of the stoic Iowa farm couple in the famed Grant Wood painting, American Gothic, pitchfork and all.
Just the stoicism, the upright, standing, calm, level stare. That painting isn't actually that far from the truth.
And the truth about the marriage of Todd and Amy, behind the smiles and family photos, was not pretty. It was falling apart.
She had felt trapped in the marriage, that she felt almost like a slave in the house. She was very unhappy.
He didn't want the marriage to end. He didn't want her to leave. He was, begging her to stay and go to therapy and get, help for their marriage.
There was evidence that he was constantly trying to keep tabs on her, borderline stalking type behavior, and maybe not even borderline. And he was keeping very close tabs on her.
What we needed to do, obviously, was talk to Todd, find out what his story was, what had happened that day, see what he could tell us, what details he could provide as to what happened to Amy and why.
The questioning was led by John Turbin, an agent with the State Police Division of Criminal Investigation, the DCI.
If I do an age relationship with Todd, how would you describe it after that, let's say the last 5 years? How would you describe your marriage to me? Very tight, actually. Yeah, communication was great. We were together all the time,
Yeah, initially, he said that they have their ups and downs like any other marriage, but indicated things were fine.
But investigators had already learned that that was not true, that there was another ongoing affair with a farm manager by the name of Jerry Frazier.
He happened to be a guy who came around and made her feel happy.
Amy's phone revealed troubling texts to a friend as Todd became suspicious of Jerry Frazier.
Amy was quite unhappy and was actually thinking about leaving Todd.
Investigators learned Amy was actually making preparations to file for divorce and move out.
She would have been entitled to a very substantial amount of money had she left him and divorced him.
For County Attorney John Bernal, it became the theory of the case, a motive of jealousy and greed.
Him having, we believe, learned that she was putting some furniture away, probably thought, this is it. If I don't do something, I'm going to lose half the farm, half of what I've worked so hard for. So the jealousy and the greed, it just kind of combined.
But first, investigators had to rule out the possibility that Amy's lover, Jerry Frazier, had not sneaked onto the farm and killed her in his own fit of jealousy and rage. Light dusting of snow on the ground that morning helped.
I made note to actually walk around the building to look for any other foot tracks or anything else indicating anybody else that would have came around the building or into the building. I did not locate anything around.
And then investigators pulled the cell phone tower records for Jerry Frazier.
And he actually had an alibi. He was out of town that day, actually far from town.
So now it was up to DCI agent Turbin to see if he could get Todd Mullis to confess.
Okay, we completed our investigation at this point, and the case basically shows that you're responsible for Amy's death at this point. I'm responsible.
He was pretty much sticking to his original story that she must have fallen on a rake.
So Turbin began by working on Todd's emotions, his pride.
You have a farm, you have a company, you own a career, and you're trying to be a good dad. In the midst of Amy, not really pulling weight in some ways, right?
Investigators knew that was true from Todd's own cell phone text to a friend.
But then to have this again in 2018, you say, oh man, not again, not again. Jerry, again. And you had suspicions. You were right to have suspicions.
But Mullis claimed he was unaware of anything going on with his wife since the first affair 5 years earlier.
I didn't hear something between you had sex with another man in 2003. You know I have. Time. You were so mad about that. And you felt betrayed again. And you saw there's no facts against that. Right? And you knew what was happening. And there was no way you were going to let things go down this way. She was not going to take all that from you. Not cheating on you twice. And then trying to take your kids. And then trying to take the farm. That wasn't happening. You weren't going to let that happen. And I understand that.
But even after 2 hours of direct accusations, Todd Mullis stuck with his version that he was not in that red shed, did not stab his wife with a corn rake.
You want to get me to confess to something? Yeah, that's all I want to say. I was having one of those on what happened. What do you think happened? I mean, I just couldn't put on him. I mean, he killed Amy. He killed me. And I can understand why.
I think all along we had a pretty good feeling it was this guy.
But to the dismay of investigators, the day ended with Todd Mullis a free man, back on his farm. Like the farmer in American Gotham, Todd Mullis gave nothing away.
Delaware County is primarily a rural county.
About 24 miles by 24 miles. Population is just under 18,000 people.
It's a very family-friendly place.
A place where neighbors know everyone and everyone's business, including Todd and Amy's.
She was a vivacious person. She loved helping out on the farm. He was a well-known farmer in the area. I guess known as a hard worker, successful farm.
But some of his neighbors told investigators Todd had a cruel streak.
From people that talked to me, Todd was a somewhat scary individual. There were all kinds of stories surrounding things that were done to animals on the farm, things that were done to animals in front of the children.
Feels that, people that once were friendly or his friends have turned their backs on him.
But with Todd Mullis back on the farm after the interrogation, investigators still were wanting for evidence.
Obviously, we have to have all of our evidence collected in this investigation before we charge.
There had been no confession from Mullis during the interrogation, as he stuck to his story.
I he killed me.
Not once did Todd say he didn't do it.
Even his 911 call seemed suspicious to them.
It was very difficult to buy that story that it was just automatically, this was just an accident, over it.
But Todd had what seemed an airtight alibi for that day from his teenage son, Tristan.
The biggest obstacle or weakest point we felt was the child.
His son told deputies that his father was in this barn, never out of his sight, before his mother was found in the red shed 100 yards away with the corn rake in her back.
The child was always considered sort of a dad's boy and really had a strong bond with his father. And while this whole investigation went on, the children were with Dad, and our concern was that Dad would essentially coach the child in a way that would help him. Boy, can you believe Mom fell on that rake? Or, do you remember we worked together all day that day? You and I were always within sight of each other.
In the interrogation, Agent Turbot even tried to bluff Mullis that Tristan had changed his story.
He knows. You guys went together. There was time when Tristan went out together. I know that now. But you don't. I do. It's downtown.
But the bluff did not work. And the farm surveillance cameras, which might have shown Todd's movement in the farmyard, were, strangely, shut down during the pivotal time frame.
There was a specific time frame that actually both cameras, they weren't recording. Then they picked up after the incident.
And Todd and his supporters continued to insist it had been an accident, citing Amy's medical condition.
She had surgery a few days prior. So she wasn't steady on her feet to begin with. And she could have, tripped or gotten dizzy. It could have fallen into her if she would have, been caught off guard or by surprise. It could have been a freak farm accident. It happens.
But then a tipping point in the case, as investigators carried out a series of search warrants on the Mullis farm.
Well, all the electronic devices from the residents were seized, computers, laptops, iPads, phones. And we ended up getting Google searches back from Todd's iPad.
Google searches for topics like what did the Aztecs do with cheating spouses and placement of the organs in the body.
It was a prosecutor's dream. 16 facts about cheating women. Once a cheater, always a cheater. Did ancient cultures kill adulterers? Thrill of the kill. Killing unfaithful women. Punishment is 18 months for killing cheating wife.
The content of those Google searches were a key fact to our investigation.
The time had come to place Todd Mullis under arrest.
I was receiving phone calls from people that knew the family and urging me to use caution when you go arrest Todd. One guy specifically said, you guys take plenty of help with you when you go arrest him.
They found him in one of the hog barns.
I'd asked him to step outside to speak with me, and when he had, I had told him I had an arrest warrant for his arrest. And I was placing him under arrest for murder in the first degree.
Todd Mullis would be held behind bars for almost 7 months before his trial began, and he would continue to insist on his innocence and gain a legion of supporters from far beyond Iowa.
I thought, well, I'll start a Facebook group, and we're up to over 300 now, and He couldn't have killed her. He's not that type of person. He's a honest, hardworking farmer who wanted his family to stay together. I don't believe he did this.
And that kind of support and encouragement helped to convince Todd Mullis he should take the stand in his own defense and see if he could persuade the jury of the very same thing.
State your name, please.
Todd Michael Mullis.
By the authority of the state of Iowa, accuse Todd Mullis of murder first degree.
Opening statements have begun. In an odd but chilling new case out of Iowa, Todd Mullis is accused of murdering his wife Amy with a corn rake.
For sure this is murder.
They conceded the fact that this was a murder. I disagree.
It's not an accident.
A huge national television audience was watching as a family tragedy played out in court.
This is a case that had torn two large families, into opposing sides. One side of the gallery was Todd Mullis's family. The other side of the gallery was Amy Mullis's family. You could sense the animosity between both sides.
And also following the case closely, hundreds of mostly women who would form a Todd Mullis is Innocent Facebook page.
Started watching the first day, and I was hooked.
Led by Tracy DeRitter of New York State.
I will admit, I had a little crush at the beginning, and knowing that people care, number one, and believe that he's innocent is huge for him.
Assistant Attorney General Maureen Hughes had just moved to Iowa, and this was her first jury trial in the state.
She wasn't nervous at all. She seemed capable and assured.
We would love for you to get to meet Amy, but you won't. Instead, you will share a courtroom with her killer. And you're going to hear about how Amy was fearful of the defendant, how she told her friends and family members that she was planning on leaving him, but that she was afraid that if he found out she was having an affair, he would kill her.
But prosecutors were worried that Todd Mullis would hardly come across like a killer to the jury.
He lost a lot of weight and looked far better than I had ever seen him in the community. So I did have concerns about what the jury might think of him as he sat there at counsel table during the trial.
Good morning, folks.
And in his opening statement, Mullis's lawyer, Gerald Firehill, was ready to play the sympathy card, portraying Mullis as a dedicated father and husband.
But behind his back, Amy was having a significant sexual affair.
And the defense lawyer had also come prepared with a surprise, completely abandoning the contention that Amy's death was due to an accident with a corn rake.
Amy Mullis was viciously and deliberately murdered. The issue that you will have to decide in this case is really not who did it, but whether Mr. Mullis did it.
And with that, Mullis's claims that his wife accidentally fell on the corn rake were out the window.
She fell on a fork. I am
The 6 holes in her body from a 4-tined fork apparently made the death by accident defense a non-starter.
Folks, Todd Mullis' statements about Amy falling on a fork and dying accidentally was an honest, legitimate, on-the-spot explanation or an attempt to explain what happened to her. It was wrong. She was murdered. Horribly.
Among the first day's witnesses, the sheriff's deputy, who retrieved the corn rake from the Mullis shed, dramatically removing it from an evidence bag, its wooden handle broken.
Now, Deputy, based on your experience and years in law enforcement, would a person be able to inflict death or serious injury on another person with that corn rake if they chose to do so?
Yes, they would.
The prosecution's case required them to prove Amy was having an affair, preparing to leave Todd and take the children and half of the farm.
It's not like losing a business. It's losing your livelihood. It's losing your family's place in the world.
Witnesses described a real-life soap opera.
Amy was all upset,
and she was crying that if her husband Todd would find out that he would kill her. He said, I have worked for this farm since I was 11 and I will not give it up. And I said at that time, he is going to kill you.
And why did you say that?
Because Todd is just the person you don't let go.
State your name and spell it for the record, please.
Leading to the man who was Amy's lover.
Jerry Frazier.
The prosecution quickly sought to show Frazier was nowhere near the Mullis farm the morning of her death and could not have been the killer.
Did you at any point go to the Mullis farm?
No.
Jerry, on the day of Amy's death, did you communicate with her that morning?
Yes.
He testified that he emailed Amy that he was sick at home, 45 miles away.
Amy, from that same account, then responded to you, and what did she write?
She says, well, that sucks. I wish I could be there to take care of you. I'm a pretty good nurse. I don't like to see you sick.
And in fact, you talked to the police shortly after Amy's death.
Yes.
And you indicated to them that you believe the last time you saw her that you did have some type of sexual relations.
It wasn't, it was not sex. It was oral.
So you do recall that there was some type of
There
oral
was
sex?
some of that, yes.
Did you and Amy ever have any conversations about what Todd would do if he found out she was having an affair?
One time she did say that if he ever found out, she would disappear.
But the most important witness for the prosecution was Todd Mullis's 13-year-old son, Tristan, who testified from a remote location. He was his father's alibi, first telling police his father was never out of his sight that morning.
And you told them at that time that you were with your dad the whole time?
Yes.
But now, in a few short answers, Tristan changed his story, saying he had left his dad alone to get a drink of water.
But what you're telling us today and what you told us at the deposition is that there was a period of time that you were not with your dad.
Yes.
And as you sit here today, do you know how much time you were away from your dad in that hour and a half in the hog barn?
No.
It was devastating testimony for the defense.
From the child's point of view, where was Dad? And the child could not say how long Dad was out of his sight.
Still, given the layout of the farmyard, would there have been enough time for Todd Mullis to have sneaked out of this barn and made his way down to the red shed and killed Amy without his son seeing him?
And it's over a football field's length away from where Amy was found to where they were working in the hog barn. It just would not scientifically been possible for Todd to get there, do whatever happened, get back for Tristan to see him. It's just impossible. I don't know why Tristan would change his story. I would think it would be hard for anybody that age to testify, especially against their own parent.
Tristan, do you want to be here testifying today?
No.
Is this a very difficult thing for you to talk about?
Yes.
You don't want anything bad to happen to your dad?
No. Call Todd Mullis.
And it all came down to this. Todd Mullis on the stand in his own defense. He was eager to tell his story, beginning with an effort to undercut the impact of his son's testimony.
Do you have an estimate of how many minutes or seconds he would have been out of the main part of the barn getting the drink before he returned?
It's a matter of seconds.
While he was doing that, did you ever leave the barn?
No, I did not.
Earlier, the jury saw the interrogation of Mullis, with the agent testifying that he never denied killing Amy.
In the case basically showed that you're responsible for putting I'm responsible. How?
He said this morning said that, in his opinion, you never denied killing Amy. Do you think you did?
Yes, I did.
And you did so how?
I stated that you want me to confess to something I did not do.
You don't get needed to accommodating. That's all I'm about to.
In my mind, that's saying I did not do that.
Was he giving you much of a chance to explain things?
Not at all. I tried several times and he wouldn't give me a chance to say 2 words.
You know, I mean, I don't know. He killed me. He killed me. And I can understand why.
Todd, did you ambush your wife Amy in that shed that day and brutally beat her and chop her up with that corn fork?
No, I did not.
You know who did.
I have no idea.
No other questions.
But there would be plenty of questions for Todd Mullis, a cross-examination the next morning, including a surprise development overnight about what was on that 911 call.
Okay, Mr. Mullis, you want to come back up and retake the stand for cross-examination, please?
Todd Mullis was in for a rough day. The internet searches found on his iPad a major theme.
There's a search for characteristics of cheating women. Did you do that search?
No.
Okay. Do you know who did that search?
No.
You have no idea.
No.
Around that same date, there's a search for what did ancient cultures do to infidelity. Did you do that search?
No.
Again, you have no idea who did that search.
No.
There's a search on here that same date. 16 facts about cheating women. Did you do that search?
No.
All around the time that his wife Amy had begun her affair with Jerry Frazier.
And right after that, killing unfaithful women. Did you do that search?
No.
And the last one of that bunch is a visited site. Punishment is 18 months for killing cheating wife. Did you do that one?
No.
Do you know who did it?
No.
Worse was about to come from an unlikely source, someone watching the trial live on television.
Because this was broadcast around the country, we were getting emails and phone calls from attorneys and citizens and, essentially people who are trying to play private eye or investigator, calling and saying, did you see this? Did you see that?
Someone had taken the time to analyze Todd Mullis's 911 call.
Well, it just happened to be a person calling in saying, you really need to listen to that 911 tape because I believe he is saying something under his breath.
As Todd Mullis is performing CPR on his wife, the tipster said he could hear him saying, cheating whore. And a few seconds later, go to hell, cheating whore. Investigators had never heard that until they got the tip from a viewer the night before the last day of the trial.
And depending on the device you were listening on, you could hear it very clearly, we thought. In my mind, it clearly said what it said.
The prosecutor walked Mullis into her trap.
John, did you just hear that whisper at the end of that?
Yes.
And what did you whisper?
I couldn't hear it.
Okay, I'm going to play it again. Todd, do you whisper cheating whore right there?
No.
So you don't remember what you whispered?
No.
Okay, I'm going to play another clip for you. Just try to listen really closely. I just want to know if you remember what he said. Right there, do you say go to hell, cheating whore?
No.
So you don't hear that?
No.
You didn't hear at 6:53, cheating whore. You didn't hear that?
I didn't hear that word.
And it's right at that
After you hear a ping, you don't care, go to hell cheating more.
No.
I have nothing to the judge.
Mullis's Facebook supporters were outraged.
I think it was a cheap shot by the prosecutor, but I don't believe, I heard cheating whore. I just didn't hear that. I didn't hear that. I heard 4, and he was breathing heavily. He was giving CPR. I didn't hear what the prosecution claims.
The defense countered that Todd was actually under his breath, mumbling, "So cold, she's so cold." I've heard that audio a dozen times, and I'm still unable to really hear exactly what it says.
But the question was, what would the jury hear?
Okay, whenever the state is ready for closing argument, Ms. Hughes, you can go ahead.
Amy Mullis didn't stand a chance. She was unarmed and unaware that she was about to be ambushed by the very man that took a vow to love and honor her.
And Prosecutor Maureen Hughes made the whispers on the 911 tape a centerpiece of her closing argument.
And I'm going to implore you to listen to that 911 call. Don't take my word for it. Don't believe me. Listen to it for yourself. Make your own determination. Why did he kill Amy? Because he didn't want to lose his farm? Because she was cheating? You might not like that Amy was having an affair, but that doesn't mean she deserved to die. Today, this nightmare finally ends. It finally ends for Amy and for her friends and family, for her children, because Amy finally gets the justice she deserves. Today is the day you find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree.
Mr. Firehelm, whenever you're ready.
Counsel, is it possible that somebody could have went in that shed and been in there and Amy surprised them? I know that sounds like a murder mystery, but could it? Whatever happened in there was sudden and violent.
Mullis's lawyers scoffed at the prosecution's interpretation of the 911 tape.
If you listen carefully, he's out of breath. He's doing compressions. He says, "She's cold. She's cold." It just boggles the mind that you would be on 911 saying that. If you murdered your wife and you're whispering, cheater, go to hell, you're going to do it on a 911 call? He's panting. She's cold. Listen, that is a Hail Mary by the state here, folks.
And finally, back to the fundamental question of the devoted farmer and his pitchfork.
Common sense. Is that man diabolical enough to not only murder his wife with that thing, but to send his 13-year-old kid to find her? Is that guy? Did he do that? Does he present that type of horrible, horrible evil? You saw him. You get to judge him.
The prosecutors expected a quick verdict.
Frankly, I think it was a slam dunk.
But the jury took more than 2 days to make its judgment.
I was thinking perhaps it would be a hung jury. Then we got the word to return to the courthouse, and the place filled up again.
An even bigger audience watched the live broadcast as the verdict was announced.
Todd Mullis looking at a big penalty if he's convicted.
I thought there's no way that they can find him guilty. I mean, he did great on the stand, but I was concerned about that 911 call.
This is unquestionably an emotional case for both parties. When the verdict is read, I expect there to be no outbursts, no disruptions of court of any kind. Would the foreperson please hand the verdict to the court attendant? We, the jury, find the defendant, Todd Michael Mullis, guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree, signed by the jury foreperson.
The look on his face broke my heart. He was crushed. It's such an injustice.
There were a lot of tears on the side of the courtroom that had Amy Mullis's family. Hugs and tears and a lot of emotion was shown.
Todd Mullis' sentencing was delayed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and he used that time to hire a new lawyer who said Mullis should get a new trial because of what he claimed was misconduct on the part of prosecutors for raising the supposed hidden whispers on the 911 tape.
And the fact of the matter is that none of those statements were contained on that tape. So in looking at this, Your Honor, the question is, did Ms. Hughes intentionally, recklessly, and repeatedly use prejudicial terminology while she knew or reasonably should have known this phrase was not in the recording that was played?
But the judge refused to throw out the guilty verdict and gave Mullis one last chance to speak.
This is the only chance you'll get to speak today before I pronounce judgment. Is there anything you would like to say today?
I did not do this. This is supposed to be America where you have a better chance of proving your innocence. We shouldn't have to prove your innocence. Innocent until proven guilty. I feel this is the other way around. And I was a faithful and loving husband, and I never did this.
And the sentence, mandatory in a case of first-degree murder.
For the charge of murder in the first degree, you are sentenced to life in prison with no opportunity for parole.
Yeah, there's nothing good that came out of this. I mean, it's a tragedy.
The children losing essentially both parents, with one dead and the other going to prison.
Oh, it's very sad. It's a very, very sad case.
I would be fine if we don't have any more homicides, but it's a strange world out there. Anything can happen.